Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be using proportions to estimate data and you will be able to do 12.5. Today students will be able to sample populations and use proportions to estimate data. But what are proportions? Proportions is when you create an equation with two ratios or two comparisons. And I think we're going to see it more in number 4 of the warm-up. But for the warm-up, if you can solve the following proportions, if you can take a couple of minutes, pause the video, and if you did that, then let's keep going. So to solve a proportion, what you have to do is do cross multiplication, or some people call it the butterfly because you have two wings. And so what you do is multiply these two numbers. So x times 15, and that's going to be equal to the other wing of the butterfly. So each wing is multiplied 3 times 5. And so x times 15 is 15x equals 3 times 5 is 15. Finally, if this is multiplication, the opposite of multiplication is division. So you will divide both sides by 15 to cancel that number. And 15 divided by 15 is 1x, but you don't need to put the coefficient 1. You know that the coefficient 1 is on the other side. 15 divided by 15 is 1. So the value of x is 1. For the second proportion, again, our butterfly will help us. X times 7 will be equal to 2 times 3. And this point is multiplication. X times 7 is 7x. 2 times 3 is 6. If we're multiplying, the opposite of multiplication is division. This cancels and x is equal to 6 cannot be divided by 7, so you just leave it as 6/7. And that will be your answer. But if they ask in decimal form, then you just divide 6 divided by 7 equals, and you can round it. It's not exact, but it's 0.86 if it's to the hundredths, tens, hundredths. Okay, and the reason is because the third number is, if it's 5 or more, then it gives 1 more to the hundredth. Number 3, same thing. X times x and 3 times 27. So x times x equals 3 times 27. X times x is x squared. 3 times 27 is 81. We take the square root of both sides, and x will be, remember that whenever we take the square root in an equation, it's always positive and negative. The square root of 81 is 9. So positive 9 and negative 9 are possible answers. For number 4, it says, in a recipe, I need 5 tomatoes for every 2 onions. How many tomatoes do I need for 5 onions? So in here, we're going to create our 2 ratios to create the proportion. And well, it's important in here is that if you put tomatoes on top for one, then you have to put tomatoes on the top for the other one, and onions in the denominator, then you have to keep that in the denominator as well, onions in here. So it says I need 5 tomatoes for every 2 onions. So 5 tomatoes for every 2 onions. How many tomatoes do I need? That means that we don't know the number of tomatoes for 5 onions for the next ratio. Now we have our proportion and we can solve it. Again, we cross multiply or use our butterfly, and then we say 5 times 5 equals 2 times x. 2 times x. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times x is 2x. Let me move this out of the way. If we're multiplying, the opposite is to divide by 2, always getting rid of whatever is the coefficient of x. And so x is equals to 12.5. That means that I need 12 tomatoes and half of the next one, okay? So that will be the answer. I need 12.5 or 12 and a half tomatoes. And so that's solving exact proportions. But now we're going to use the concept of proportions to be able to estimate data in real populations. So number 1 says, at a school there are 700 students. 50 students were surveyed if they had a dog or dogs. 26 of them answered yes. About how many students can you estimate to have dogs? So what is it that they're giving us? The information that they're giving us is that there are 700 students, and 50 students were asked a question. 26 of them answered yes, they have dogs, okay? And so in here, we're going to put the number of students, put it at the denominator, students. And for the first one is the total number, okay? So 700 are the total. And how many students were surveyed? 50 were surveyed. For this one, what they're asking is how many students have dogs? So students with dogs. Do we know out of the 700 how many students have dogs? No. That's what it's asking about. How many students can you estimate to have dogs? So that's what we're trying to find out. And we know that out of the 50, 26 students have dogs. So now we have that proportion, okay? Again, this is out of the total number of students. What's the total number of students who have dogs? And we don't know, but by surveying a small sample, we can figure out about how many students. Remember that with data analysis is an estimation, and it should be very close to what we find out. But again, that's why it's an estimate. And again, this represents out of the students surveyed. This is the number of students with dogs. Out of the total number of students in that school, we're trying to find out how many do have dogs. We're going to do our butterfly or cross multiplication. And we get x times 50. So x times 50 equals 700 times 26. And so x times 50 is 50x. In here, what you can do is leave whenever you have only one number with zeros, you can multiply the number times the other number and just leave the zeros at the end. Put them at towards the right. And so 7 times 6 is 42, carry 4. 7 times 2 is 14, and 4 is 18. So that's 18,200. Now we're going to divide both sides by 50 because the opposite of multiplication is division. We divide by 50. This cancels because 50 divided by 50 is 1x, but we don't need to put the 1. In division, and only in division, we can cancel a 0 for a 0 in the numerator and denominator. And so we start 18 divided by 5. And you can do it like this, okay? If you wish. But 18 divided by 5, that's 3. 3 times 5 is 15. You have 3 left. 32 divided by 5 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. To 32, you have 2 left. 20 divided by 5 is 4. And 4 times 5 is 20. To 20 is 0, so that's it. So it's going to be 364. And so that's the answer. I'll tell you what it means in a minute. Just let me just show with long division. The 5 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. We subtract, and 18 minus 15 is 3. Bring down the 2, that's the 32 that we have here. And 5 into 32 goes 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. 32 minus 30 is 2. Bring down the other 0. And 5 into 20 goes 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract that and you get 0. And as you can see, dividing directly or with long division, you get the same answer. Now, what does that answer mean? About how many students can you estimate to have dogs? That means that out of the 700 students, about 364 will have dogs. Again, it's an estimate because we don't know for sure, but at least it gives us a number that it's close. There are about 364 students who have, and it can be a dog or dogs, okay? A dog, maybe I should put a slash, and dogs, okay? Because we don't know if they own one dog or more than one, okay? So that's how we use proportions, and again, it's just super important that we align total number of students, total number of students surveyed, total number possible of students having a dog, the total number of students who do have a dog of those who are surveyed. For number 2, it says, of the same 700 students, 320 are male. If 40 names of students are chosen at random, about how many should be male? Okay, so in here, they're giving us different information. They're still telling us that there's the 700 total number of students. They're also telling us that out of those 700, 320 are male. So out of the total, 320 are male. And then in here, the other piece of information is either that they're from the chosen or the sample group. They're either telling us that the number of students who are male in the sample or the total number of students sampled. So let's look at that again. If 40 names of students are chosen at random, so that means that 40 people are going to be sampled in total. That means that the 40 goes in the denominator. Okay, this is the total number of people surveyed or chosen. About how many should be male. So that's the X right there. And I think with the question it's a little bit more clear. Oh, that's what we are missing. That's where I put the X. The group for male is. Okay, so now that we have the proportion, again, we create our wings for the butterfly, and 320 times 40, 320 times 40 equals 700 times X. Okay, and in here again, I usually do little tricks, but you don't have to. I mean, if you have to, you can multiply in here or use your calculator. I like to show you a trick so that you use your brain more, because that's going to help you develop more neurons and more connections with your brain cells. And so let's try to do as much as we can, learning little tricks. Okay, so again, this is a 4 with a 0. So I can just put these 2 zeros and ignore them, and then start multiplying just the 4 with the 32. So 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. So it's 1200. So it's 12,800 equals 700x. If we're multiplying, the opposite of multiplication is division. We divide both sides by 700. This cancels, and x is equal to, again, another trick. We already learned it. We can cancel 1 0 for every 1 0 in the numerator and denominator, or in division, right? Another 0 with another 0. And so it's a lot easier to just deal with 128 divided by 7 than 12,800 divided by 700. Okay? Again, you can cancel only in division. 12 divided by 7, you can only, 7 goes into 12 only once, and 1 times 7, 7. To 12, you have 5 left. So you carry it over, and now you have 58 over here. How many times does the 7 go into 58? So 7 times 8 is 56. So 8, 56 to 58, you have 2 left, but there is nothing else. Oh, that's when you add a 0 that doesn't exist and you put a decimal. And how many times does the 7 go into 20? It goes 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. To 20, you have 6 left. And it can go on and on and on. So the answer is that there is 18.2, about 18.2 people in the sample who will be male. Since it's people, we cannot have pieces of people, so we're going to say about 18 students should be male. Again, this is an estimate. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less, but it would give us a rough idea of about how many students would be male. Okay? Okay, so let me just, before we finish, do the long division in case that was a little confusing, especially because this one included decimals, but I just remember that we got rid of the zeros. So it's only 108 divided by 7. The 7 goes into 12 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. You subtract and you have 5 left. That's the 5 right there. You bring down the 8. So now it's 58. How many times does the 7 go into 58? 8 times, because 8 times 7 is 56. You subtract, and 58 minus 56 is 2. There's nothing to bring down, and at that moment is when some people put a decimal in here and add a 0 and bring up the decimal. Okay, you now bring the 0 that didn't exist, and again, because it didn't exist, that's when you put the decimal. Now, how many times does the 7 go into 20? 2 times. 2 times 4 is 14. 2 times 7 is 14. And 20 minus 14 is 6. And you can keep going, but since it's people, we're going to need the whole number. If this was a 5 or more, then it should go up to 19 students. If it's 4, 3, 2, or 1, or 0, then it stays as 18. Okay, so that's why about 18 students should be male. And with this, we finish our lesson. If you can please give us a thumbs up, subscribe around here. This is the list of the entire unit for data analysis, and here will be the next video. Now you're able to do 12.5 and have fun.